Okay, it is the top of the hour, so we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone, and happy GIS Day. My name is Nicole Ernst, and I am one of the Associate Directors for the Geotech Center, and I also teach geospatial technology at Harrisburg Area Community College in central Pennsylvania. Just a little bit about the Geotech Center before we get started with the session. The Geotech Center is a National Science Foundation center that provides curriculum resources and professional development opportunities for secondary, 2-year, and 4-year educators. And we encourage you to visit our website, geotechcenter.org, which I'll put in the chat in a moment, to learn more about what we are doing and what types of initiatives that we work on. This session is being recorded. As you have questions, place those in the chat, and then Megan will address those questions at the end. At the end of the session, her links that she's sharing here will also be posted on our hub site. And again, in a moment, I'll put that link into the chat so that you know where to go for her presentation resources. We do ask that you remain muted during the session so that there is no interruption to Megan's presentation. And so without any further ado, I will introduce Megan Danielson from Mapbox, and I'll let her take the session away.
All right, thanks, Nicole, and welcome everybody and happy GIS Day. Today I'm going to give you an introduction to Mapbox. So if you've used or seen Mapbox before, please put that in the chat. It's really great to know how people have been exposed to this platform. Brief introduction to Mapbox as an entire platform, and we're really going to focus today on how you can leverage Mapbox Studio and get started making maps today. All right, let me, oops. Already clicking too fast. Okay, so first, my name is Megan Danielson. I'm a community program manager at Mapbox. I usually give this an intro as I'm a Disney princess because birds land on my hand. The community team at Mapbox supports nonprofits, educational institutions, and other positive impact projects. And I'm really the liaison at Mapbox who interfaces with a lot of educators, whether that's high school, university, or if we're just looking at professional organizations trying to leverage Mapbox tools to introduce that to folks who want to learn more about web mapping or integrating any sort of APIs and SDKs into their mobile applications. So what is Mapbox? And this is a pretty high-tech video here that, sorry if it's a little dizzying, but Mapbox is a live location data platform. It's built for developers and designers, but I think it spans a larger gamut than that. And at Mapbox, we don't actually build apps. So if you've seen our application, the Mapbox map out there, we don't typically build those. Instead, we focus on building the Lego pieces, and that is to say that the APIs and the SDKs that enable other people to build a location into their platform. And so anything from web, mobile, AR, and VR, which you can see here on your screen. So our building blocks, these are our Lego pieces, as I like to refer to them, include search. So we have services for our geocoding services, so both forward and reverse geocoding, so taking lat-long points and turning that into a physical address, or taking a physical address and turning that into latitude and longitude points. We have navigation services, so we provide really powerful routing engines, traffic-aware travel times, and turn-by-turn navigations to help people build engaging navigation experiences. So if you've seen Lyft or Uber or rideshare applications, that's kind of the services, the building blocks that we provide for that. We also have our maps. So our maps division lets you create, manage, and export maps and custom data. And that's a little bit of what we'll focus on today with Mapbox Studio. And lastly, we have Atlas, which allows users to serve offline maps from anywhere. So it's basically all of these things that I've already talked about, but in an offline platform. So these are our building blocks, and they let you create interactive data visualizations. They help you design beautiful lightning fast maps for web, mobile, and again, AR and VR. And our building blocks really help individuals and organizations build a really wide range of products. We currently actually have 600 million monthly active users and 1.8 million, I believe, monthly active developers, and they work in all, I mean, you all are in the geospatial field, so you know that GIS and geography is everywhere. And that really, I see that every day at Mapbox because we work with industries like ride sharings, we work with people in retail, we work with folks in the media and social media, outdoor adventure, weather, automotive, and the list just goes on and on. And usually when I'm talking to university audiences, like the chances are, even if you hadn't heard of Mapbox before, that you've probably seen or used Mapbox in your life. Like if you open up your phone right now, chances are pretty high that one of the apps that you have on your phone is powered by a Mapbox map. So I just want to show you a couple examples of that. So this is one of my favorite maps that the New York Times has made as one of our customers. This was the Democratic nominee donation map, and there were a couple other interactive maps that went along with this. So you might have seen us here in the New York Times, the Washington Post. Probably a lot of like the election maps that have been coming up have been powered by Mapbox. You might have also seen us if you have like an outdoor app such as Strava. So they use us for some of their outdoor adventures. And this is how most people actually interact with the Mapbox map. When I started working at Mapbox, my dad called me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I saw Mapbox on my Weather Channel map today." So AccuWeather and the Weather Channel are both customers of ours and use our maps every single day. So that's the very quick, concise version of what Mapbox is. But today we're going to focus on building a map in Mapbox Studio. So there are a couple of different ways to create a visualization with Mapbox. So the first, what we'll focus on today is in Studio, and we're going to be building that with layers. So if you've used a desktop GIS before, there's a lot of parallels, and we can talk a little bit about the nuances and the differences as well between how this interface is set up and what you would see in, say, like a QGIS or an ArcGIS. Another way to create visualizations with Mapbox is to do this with code, and you can do that with Mapbox GLJS, which is our web mapping library. And Studio is actually powered by Mapbox GLJS. So I can show you a couple tricks today about how to leverage Studio to kind of think about, especially if you're new to coding, to find some of the syntax for designing and styling your layers if you do want to go with the GLJS solution. For either of these solutions, we have a lot of really great tutorials and documentation on our website to help get you started. So I've shared a link to this presentation in the chat, and I can share it again so that you can actually use these things to get to our site and not get too lost. So before we open up the program, I just want to briefly go over a few aspects of Mapbox Studio and a little bit of the language that we use when we talk about Mapbox applications. So Mapbox Studio is a tool for designing custom map styles. We refer to them as map styles. You might know them as base maps, and managing your location data. So what you're seeing right now is what we call the style editor. And this is where you create and style interactive maps. You can tweak everything in this interface. So everything from like the colors, the types of fonts that you're using, every single line that's drawn on here, we give you a lot of data to start out with. You can use one of our core styles, and I'll show you what that means in a second, or you can build a map completely from scratch. It's completely up to you. You can also add your own data to use in any of these styles. When I talk about Mapbox, I like to talk about the base map overlay paradigm. So with a lot of different web mapping or mapping applications, you're really taking your data and putting it on top of somebody else's map. That's not the case when you're working with Mapbox Studio or even doing this programmatically with GLJS. Your data can go anywhere inside of the layer stack. So your data becomes a part of the base map style. You can also use Mapbox Studio to create data. We have something called the dataset editor. More for like simplified data, or if you want to be doing a little bit of like building tracing or adding points and some field data. And then you can export it to a vector tile. So you can create points, lines, and polygon features with our drawing tools, and then add that to your base map. So next, I just wanted to go over the building blocks of a Mapbox map. And the real thing that I want to focus on here is something called vector tiles, which I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with. A vector tile is a lightweight data format for storing geospatial vector data, such as points, lines, and polygons. So in Mapbox, we work with vector tiles. We can ingest shapefiles, GeoJSON, CSV, and a couple other formats, and those sort of specifications are on our website. But when you upload your data to Mapbox Studio, either using our uploads tool, or we have something called the Mapbox tiling service, that will convert your data from a GeoJSON or a shapefile into a vector tile to be incorporated into our maps. And it's a really fast and lightweight way of using and rendering data on the fly. So with that, I thought we'd make a data visualization in Mapbox Studio. And this is what we're going to be making today. We're going to be working with the CDC data, and I'll share links to that. And this first data that you're seeing on top is overdose data in the United States for 2017. And underneath it are polygon files for prescription opioid data, so prescribing rates within the US, but for every county within the entire United States. And we're going to show you some of this functionality about how you can style things at different levels, how you can change layers, and how you could actually turn layers on and off at different zoom levels to create this really nice interaction. If you haven't already, if you want to get started by creating a Mapbox account, totally fine if you just want to follow along with me as I'm going through this. But it's fast and easy to create an account. You don't need a credit card to put down. And for educational use, we always want to make sure that it's not cost prohibitive. We have a very generous free tier, which usually encompasses any educational use cases. But if for some reason some student map or some researcher's map goes viral, which we've actually seen with some of the COVID maps that university researchers have been creating, you could just reach out to the community team and we'll provide you with coupons and discounts to offset your costs. So just to ease anybody's worry that this is usually a free program when you're working within a teaching context. So once you have an account, you'll want to go to studio.mapbox.com. And I was just practicing making this before. And that's where all of your styles will live. It'll bring you to, this is the Studio platform. So these are all the styles that I have created over time. If you wanted to create a data set, the data set editor is right here, and you could create a new data set by name, or you could upload a data set and even edit it in the data set editor. If you were wanted to upload data such as a shapefile, a GeoJSON, or a CSV data, one way to do it would just be to use this user interface to upload your files. So it accepts MB tiles, KML, JPX, GeoJSON, shapefiles, and CSVs, both raster and vector. But first, I've already uploaded all the data for you, so I'm actually going to show you another way to add data to your map when we do this. So the first thing that we want to do is select new style. And when I said we have core styles already at your fingertips, this is what I meant. We have all these core styles that our designers have come up with, and they were made for different use cases. So for instance, that Strava example that I was showing you before, if you really want to focus on more outdoor activities and you don't want extraneous information such as like every single road sign to be present because you're on trails and not on the road, that would be a really great style for you to start out with. Versus if I was creating a navigation app and those things, giving directions and having that network context would be important, maybe the streets or the navigation styles would be better suited for me. I really like when I'm just putting data on a map to start with a more muted design. So we're going to start with monochrome today. And for each of these, you could actually choose a variation and it changes the color scheme and everything within that color scheme. So the fonts, every road, every layer, and you can kind of get a preview of what it looks like before you even start. You can also, if you wanted to, you could start from a blank style, which means no data will be on your map and you're adding every single layer to it. So we can start by customizing monochrome. Great, it's just, as always, when you're live demoing, it always takes a little bit longer to load. So before we start adding data to this map, I just want to orient you to the tools a little bit. So over here, we have two things called components and layers. Layers should look really familiar to everybody. It's just the stack of layers that go on the map. And these are, when you start with a core style, these are all the layers that Mapbox actually provides for you. And there's a lot of data in here, and each of them are styled. What we've been working on over the years is converting these into components. And components are really just a collection of related map features that you style as a single unit, and they can include features, multiple different features, and also multiple different types. For example, they can include polygons, which we refer to as fill in the Mapbox ecosystems. They can include lines and symbols and text and things like that. So administrative boundaries, if you wanted to start doing it, includes all the country boundaries, disputed country boundaries, state province boundaries. So all these different like geographical hierarchies of boundaries, and you could adjust how each of those looks really easily just by using the component. You can adjust each individual piece of a component if you want, each layer that goes into it. But this was created because for designers, it's really overwhelming to come into a new map and tweak every aspect of it. So this was made to make it easier for you to design your map quick and easy. So I just want to show you what it looks like when we adjust something in a component. So let's say land and water are one component. You could easily just change the color of the map, and it changes everything there. Or I could, let's see, these are place labels, and it's nice, you can click on the map and it'll tell you which component and which layers are inside of that. So these are all the layers within the area that I clicked. So if I want to adjust something on place labels, I could change the typography. So I can change the type of font, which I think is pretty fun. So this is, I think it's a major cities. Let's go into major cities. And I put a fun font in here. So you can upload fonts as well. I think it's called Dingbats. Oh, Harry Potter. It might be in my other account. Sorry. Oops. It's being a little slow. That's not major cities anyway. But let's just say I wanted to change it to Dinas Pro, and I needed to change the size of that. So now you can see that the font is really large. And I had in here this font that was Harry Potter and the Dingbats, which actually just changed every letter to a Harry Potter character, which was completely useless, but does look really fun on a map. So you can do this for a serious project, or sometimes I just play around in Mapbox to make, I think the last time I made a Marauders map, which is something from Harry Potter, if you're familiar with it. So it's really easy to tweak any part of this. And then if I didn't really want any of those, I could just go back to the start and undo all of those changes. Okay, with that, we're gonna start adding some layers. And I really encourage you, just play around with the components to see what you change. And you can get really lost in that framework, but it's so easy to create a really beautiful and stylistic base map. And you do not have to be somebody who has programming experience, and you do not have to be a designer to be able to create a map so easily in Mapbox. So right now we're gonna add layers to the map. And the way that you do that is you go into the Layers tab and you select this plus sign over here for add a new layer. If you're entering Mapbox for the first time, it does give you a really nice tour of how to do all of this. And again, we have great documentation if for some reason you forget after this session, or if you forget after the tour that you've done. So you could upload data again. This is the same thing as that tile sets page that I sent you. But today, I'm going to show you can actually add a source by ID. If a source exists within the Mapbox ecosystem and somebody has made it public, then you can just take their tile set ID. And the first one we're going to be using, I'll put it in the chat right there. And this is going to be that opioid overdose data that I was just showing you. And just so you know, I got this from the CDC website. So this is the 2017 overdose data. And we're going to be recreating this design right here. I'll show you. So the first thing that you see is this X-ray mode. It gives you, Mapbox gives you a preview of where all of your data is on the map. So we can see that we have, oops, oh, went the wrong way. Our data isn't visible at every single zoom level. It does become visible at zoom level 3. So this is every state within the United States. And that's how we select our data. And over here is how you can select the different types. So again, polygon is fill. That's how we refer to it. You could choose fill extrusion. So if you had buildings, like a layer that you wanted to have a 3D extrusion, that's pretty typical for buildings there. You could change it to line if you wanted to, and it would just become, this is how you could create borders. Circle would obviously not be appropriate for this. Symbol is really interesting. So if you had points that you wanted to add to your map, but you wanted to demarcate them by different types of symbols, you could upload your own SVGs to Mapbox and then assign them to those symbols. And you can also really easily create a heat map using Mapbox. Again, that would be another point layer that you would upload. So we're going to style this data. And there's a couple different ways that you could style. You could style this by zoom level. So we're going to actually adjust that in a moment. So that's just saying at this zoom level, when I'm really zoomed out, I want it to be all these colors. When I zoom in, I want them to change or completely disappear. You can style by a data range. So this is for your numerical values. Or you can style with conditions. If you had categorical data that you wanted or anything that's in string format, you could still style it with conditions here. And there's so many different things. I haven't even gotten into all of these about what you can customize when you're working with Mapbox Studio in any of your layers. So we want to style this across a data range, and we're actually going to style as a rate. And I have some colors that I'm going to add. So the first stop that I'm going to make is going to be, I'm going to set it to, 11, and I've added some hex code values. So it says 11, and then the next one is actually just a hex code. If you wanted to, you could style by RGB, or you could adjust your colors here or choose from this color palette. But I've already pre-selected these for us. You also have the ability to select how you want this to create the differentiation in color. So linear is going to create more of a linear, it's going to create a linear gradient, or you can do exponential or step. Today we're just going to do step between all of these. And actually, I did not want that one to be 1. So the next step is going to be at 11.1, and we're going to change the color. And you're going to start to see this map take shape. I'm just going to put the rest of these in the chat for people to follow along. 13.6. And I'm just getting these colors and ranges from the CDC map because I pulled the data directly from there. 16 is the next stop. $18.6. And then the last one is 21. So 21 and above will be this last color. Oops. No. So here's our map after just adding those colors. Some things that we might want to add to this would be the borders around every single state to add a little bit, to break up the data a little bit more. I could use the boundaries data that's in there, or I could simply take this data that I have and I can duplicate that layer. And let's clear out all the styling rules that we just made. Select data, and instead of that fill, maybe I want it to be a line so that I have all the borders. And then I can say, well, that line is a little bit thick. Maybe I want it to be white. And oof, I feel like the width of it is maybe too much. We want it to be a little bit more subtle, so we can go down to 0.5. And there we have just kind of like a nice, cleaner looking map for people to observe. The other thing that you might want is, okay, well, maybe I'm not from the United States, or I'm not as familiar with US geography, and it might be nice to have some contextual information in terms of state labels. All those labels are here, they just happen to be under our map. So we can copy that label, or you can actually export the components into their constituent parts, and we can put that label above. So again, anything that's on top of the layer stack is going to be on top of the map, and we might want to change the color so that the contrast is a little bit different. You can see how easy it is to actually make these changes. I like that layer. And one of the things that you might want to do is filter it. So I don't want all those layers to look the same. So ISO, yep. So now what that's done is only select, I believe, for this one. Oop, no, that didn't work for this layer. That's not the right way. Anyway, you can filter things by their different features here. So it would remove values that I didn't want to see. So if I need to find a way after this, which I should have done beforehand, about how to just filter by things that are within the US so that I'm not seeing all these state labels outside of the US, which makes it look a little bit too overcomplicated. So we're just gonna ignore that. You can also show layers and hide layers right here. So the next layer that we wanna add is we want to add that prescription data, and then we want to create that zoom function so that our state data disappears as we're going into our county data. And please feel free to ask things in the chat if you need me to redo a step, or if you have questions. I'm happy to stop, especially while we're in this interactive part. So this is going to be the new ID for the layer that we want to get, the tile set that I've already created for you. So it can add source by ID. Find it, and you can see the preview is already going to be here for every single county within the US. And again, we're going to style this data. I have the styling rules here for anybody that wants them. We're going to style across a data range. And we're going to style by prescriptions. And 0 will be this color. And this is going off of, just so you have a preview of what we're doing, the prescribing rates map here, found again on the CDC site. I'll edit this stop to be 57.2. I always love watching the map take shape as we're going along. And I believe this data might have had non-existent data, or areas that didn't have data as 1,000 in it. So we just want to put that in there instead of a null value. Right. And 396, one more stop. This is the high end of the data from the spreadsheet that I created of it. And that should be it. So again, our data is on top of our state data, so we can just grab it in the layer list and move it under, but now it's completely disappeared. Even if we zoom in and out of the map, we can't see that data because we have a layer that is 100% opaque above it. So one of the features that we can adjust here is the opacity, and you can adjust it here on the side. So you could style the opacity. You see what that looks like in a preview. Again, it's always going to be slow when you're presenting. Oh, sorry, this is the prescription data, that's why. This data. So you can see the data is underneath there. So one of the things I like to do is I like to actually go back to select data and filter the zoom extent. So maybe we only want people to be able to see no longer want them to see our state data when we're at zoom 5.5. That's when we want them to see our county data. So see here, now that we're zoomed out, only the state data, but as we zoom in, we can see only the county data. And now it looks like our copy of we can change this to state border so we know what it means. That white border that we chose that was more appropriate for the states isn't really appropriate here for when we're looking at the county. Like it's too blending in here. So we want to add a little bit of a contrast. So we can style across a zoom range, and we can say when it's 0, it can be white, but as soon as it gets to that 5.5, when we know our other layers coming in, we actually want to change it to something a bit darker, higher contrast. And instead of having it be linear, again, I would probably change that to step so that it's just kind of an immediate change that you see right there. And again, if you wanted to add your boundary data for each of the counties to help people see each county a little bit better, we could just copy our prescription data and change it to a line, right? And then you can see what that looks like. Again, we don't want it to be that thick. And maybe we don't want it to be as bold. The color could be a little bit lighter, right? So you can see things starting to take shape here. Let me check time. Great. So now we've created this beautiful map, and you might want to be able to share this with your friends and family or your colleagues. So the first thing that you would need to do is, well, I always like to change the title of my map because monochrome is the default. So I'm going to call this Prescriptions and Overdose Map, JSA, and it'll save, right? And I'm going to publish my map. And it's really great so that you can actually see what you've drafted before. This is just a preview. So this is the map that we started out with, and this is the map that we ended up with. And you can see the different layers here. And you just select publish. And now there's a few different ways that you can view this map. We can share it automatically, and I can just take this preview to send to people. So let's just put this in the browser now. Takes a second to load. Yep, and here's the map, which is really great, an easy way to share or embed your map. And so you can make it public. So if you make this public, that means other people can copy this style that you made and add it to their account and make edits, and those edits will not impact your actual style itself. Or if you wanted to embed this into a web map or use it in a mobile application, you would need these two things. You would need your style URL, and you would need your Mapbox access token. And these are the tokens that you create to access anything that's on your account. There's some great resources linked right here to help get you started with building a really simple web map. And what I did is I actually went ahead and recreated this as a web map. in JS Fiddle, which is a great program that allows you to just kind of, there are many different like in-browser text editors that you can be using. JS Fiddle is one of them, CodePen is another. And it's really not that many lines of code. I just started coding in January and feel like the documentation that we have and the examples for copying and pasting are really easy to get through. And I'm happy to help any educators or students out there who are looking to get started working with JavaScript or HTML and CSS. Because I know it's a journey and it's very rewarding once you're able to start creating maps like this. So I just added this legend. And the other thing that I did is as it zooms in, the legend actually changes and updates to show what we're looking at in terms of the opioid prescribing drug rates. And they match exactly what you're seeing here for their map. So those are just, that was a really quick intro to Studio. If you do have any questions, again, ask in the chat. The other resources that I really wanted to point you all to is our Mapbox education page. So here we have access to our labs, which are low-code solutions to getting started using Mapbox. Our tutorials probably spans a larger gamut for low-code solutions with working with Studio to working with web mapping to how do you create an actual mobile application. You can request us for guest lectures. And again, if you have any questions about Mapbox usage, whether it's how do I get started, is it free? We also have data sets and products that you might be interested in gaining access to. That's also our job, is to help you leverage those resources. That's what you can find here on our education page. And again, sorry, this isn't loading. There's also a great student showcase, and for some reason this didn't load properly, just to show how other universities and students have worked with Mapbox in the past, or how we've actually worked with them. And I really encourage you to check that out. I've been really, really proud of what students have made. And every year, if you are a student and you have a project that you've done, we'd love to do a showcase and post that on our blog and put out all over Twitter. So if you want to share things that you built with Mapbox, we would love to see it. The tutorials page, the education labs, will be to here. So great resources for getting started, along with our impact tools, which are really low-code solutions to build out different solutions, which I'll cover in a second, give you some examples of that. But everything from sheet mapper, which is just taking a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV, or a Google sheet, and then converting that to points on a map, creating a location finder with filters, or creating a scrolly telling narrative. All of those resources are here, and they're really made for folks that don't have as much developer experience. It's even for folks who do have some developer experience, and then I'll show you ways in which they've tweaked them, which have been amazing. Again, our tutorials page, lots of different resources here. And this is the impact tools page. So these are the low-code solutions that I was just talking about that we've been developing. So this is Sheet Mapper. Again, it's taking a spreadsheet and converting it to a map. And this is an example of what somebody's done with it. This is COVID memories, and they've actually created, these are all points that were on a spreadsheet. Then they added used it to add icons to a map and record people's memories of what's been happening throughout the COVID-19 experience. Another one that we created is Finder with filters. This is basically no code. You just have to configure your file. So it'll take your spreadsheet, add points to a map, and then create filters based on data within your spreadsheet. And folks have used that for things like early polling stations to help people locate them. So you could, which borough do I want to look in? And these are all options that you could create. These people had no coding experience, and they built this in about, I want to say, she said she built this in like 20 minutes, which is really exciting. This is another example of the same template being used to show the history and memories of migrations throughout France. So same template, but a completely different style that they built in Mapbox Studio to really make it their own. And then another popular one that we have is our scrolly telling template. So this is an example by Al Jazeera, who used our template to build a scrolly telling narrative to talk about the Canada pipeline that was being built. And all of these are at the end of my presentation if you do have any questions about getting started. All of these resources should be here. And if you have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to community@mapbox.com to help you get started.
thank you, Megan. That was awesome. I now have to spend every waking moment trying to learn all these fun new tools. So I know what I'll be doing the next couple days. Since there was only a few of us in the session, if you want to unmute your mic to ask a question, feel free to do so. And also feel free to put your question into the chat. Or just to tell Megan how awesome her demo was. That's
Megan, great job. I really, as you and I'm Tom Mueller from CalU.
Oh, hey.
Now we get to see each other face to face. So I really want to use Mapbox in my crime mapping course as the display, the cartographic, right? They do some of the statistics. But I did see that students can do, and I should have known, obviously, can do buffer analysis, proximity analysis, things like that. Are those types of tools things that we need to make you aware of because I saw that when you logged in, it said you could only upload so many data sets and things like that. Are there certain parameters that we have to be aware of as educators that, after you do so many things, we run into a wall, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, so that would be a great place for us to interact in terms of there are limitations on how to use just the uploads panel that I was showing in Mapbox Studio, but we do have something called the Mapbox tiling service.
Okay.
It is, unfortunately, it's a command line, but it's not too scary at all. I figured it out in about 10 minutes, and again, not a programmer. And that is just a way for folks to upload large amounts of data and to scale it back. So you're not if I'm doing a crime map for Pennsylvania, I'm not actually uploading and tiling data for the entire world.
Right.
And to kind of for us to create those limitations so that we're not processing that data set for the entire world when it doesn't need to be.
Right.
So yeah, definitely can help with that. And if any students are running into limitations or just headaches with it, please feel free to reach out and we can do a one-on-one session with them.
Excellent. Well, as Nicole said, that I guess now, besides grading essays for the fall semester, what I'll be doing over my Thanksgiving break, I won't have my second piece of pie until at least I get that first lab done. So yeah. I do want to appreciate it, but before Nicole yells at me, I need to go off to another session. So thank you again. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for joining.
Any other questions or comments for Megan?
Or anything else you'd like to see?
That's a dangerous question.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I was going to do an entire course on how to do beautiful earthquake data. Yeah.
Hey, Megan.
Hi.
Is some of the maps that are made in Mapbox Studio can be put into, if you can print it out or do any other things on that too?
Yes, you can. And if you go to the Impact Tools tutorial page that I shared, there's an entire lesson on just exporting to print maps for poster sessions. If you want to print it out to just create a beautiful picture that you want to frame in your house. We do sessions all the time at Mapbox to expose this to even our employees. We do a postcard making session.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, where we export cards and then send them to each other throughout the office. So yeah. Yeah, so directly from Studio, there's an export link. It'll create a PNG for you. And there's some tips and tricks on that tutorial to help you get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
If there's not anything else, just a reminder that some of the links that Megan shared in her presentation are on our hub site. The links to the impact tools and Ed Labs is there. And we will also post Megan's presentation with her permission on the hub site should you want to review what she went over today. So if there's nothing else, we will then end this session, and I hope to see you all in one of our next sessions. There's a session on COVID-19 ArcGIS dashboards, humanitarian mapping, and geotechnologies in European education. So I hope to see you in one of those upcoming sessions.